Welcome and good morning at this new FEPS and Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung Policy Breakfast meeting. I'm David Rinaldi, Director of Studies at the Foundation for European Progressive Studies. And I'm very glad to host you in this online policy breakfast meeting to speak about two of the current biggest challenges that politicians, but the world in general, we all of us are facing today. Is the big challenge of the climate emergency and the big challenge of delivering health outcomes. We gather here today because FEPS, together with the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung, has embarked into a project to try to help mainstreaming climate, trying to somehow understand the connections between climate policy and important other domain and disciplines. For instance, we have been looking at the interplay between climate and gender policy, the interplay between climate policy and digital policy. But today, the focus will go on the correlations between climate action and the protection of the health of the people. So, in a sentence, we will be looking at the health of the planet together with the health of the people living in it. I'm very glad that we have four outstanding experts. The first two that will give an informed presentation will be Dr. Willi Haas, senior researcher and lecturer at the Department of Economics and Social Justice, Institute for Social Ecology of the University of Natural Resources and Life Science, the BOKU, that is active as of 1872 in Vienna. And he's co-author for the book, Christina Lampl, junior health expert at the Competence Center for Climate and Health of Gesundheit Österreich. That should be a translation, I think is the correct translation, could be the Austrian Public Health Institute. Together with Christina's colleague Ernst Einger and Andreas Schmidt, they have edited a super nice policy brief that they will try to somehow distill some of the expertise collected in this morning policy breakfast meeting. I'll give them the floor in a second so they can tell you exactly what is the mapping of the overlap between climate and health and how we can identify the so-called win-win solutions. But we are also happy to have two first-rate discussants with us today. Tomáš Petříček was Minister of Foreign Affairs in the Czech Republic, and he was also Deputy Minister for Labor and Social Affairs for the Czech Republic. At the moment, he's director of the Progressive Analytical Center in Prague. Thanks, Tomáš, for being with us. And other inputs from Céline Charveriat, that has been working as executive director for the Institute for European Environmental Policy for quite some time. Now she's also active with FEPS and several other think tanks and NGOs, and she's teaching at Sciences Po and has done, among the different line of research in her life, also health and climate. But let's go to the concrete contributions that we can give. I pass the floor to Christina Lampl, that she will start giving this presentation for this nice virtual cafe in Vienna. It's a policy breakfast meeting, so we are all allowed to have a coffee, and it's good that you speak from a coffee bar, so that we try to keep this informal but informative at the same time. Christina, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you for the nice introduction, and good morning from Vienna and from the mentioned coffee bar. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can very well.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the nice introduction. And yeah, I've already introduced very well, and David mentioned it right. I'm working at the Austrian National Public Health Institute, the Competence Center for Climate and Health. And together with my colleagues, you can see them on the first slide. We just analyzed last year the cutting surfaces between climate, health, and equity. So we want to go a step further and not talking about like a win-win situation, but more for a triple win. So we also take into account the equity aspects in different, or when talking about different angles from climate and health. Before talking about the structure of our presentation, I want to draw your attention on two angles we spot on last year's work. So on the past, and what we can see there is that the result today's great challenges are results of thinking and acting in different silos from different policy areas, so to say. And if we continue to do that in this silo thinking way, we will not adequately address the complex societal problems in a far-reaching transformation. Sorry, but now it works. And what we need is not only this, like a little bit working together, like you can see it on these three bubbles. What we need more is a strongly interlinked policy domains, like you can see it on this picture. And the concerted action across boundaries is an underestimated challenge in itself, and it requires an understanding of complex and interacting systems. And we have created a very systematic thinking framework. But before talking about that, I just want to show you shortly the structure of our short presentation today. So I'm going to start with the significant potential we can see when dealing with health and climate plus equality aspects, what we mean or why no action is no option, and what's happening if we are not addressing interlinkages and what unwanted outcomes we have to deal with. One focus of our work were the analysis of the multiple barriers for transgressing the silo walls, co-benefits as a carrot. Before coming to our recommendations, Willi is going to talk about the Green Deal as an opportunity for health equity, and closing our short presentation by new governance principles for breaking down silos. And mentioned sometimes now, I'm going now to talk about the significant potential for both sides, so to say, so for health policies to mitigate climate change and vice versa for climate policy to reduce disease burden. And I'm going to start by, I think, the first thing that a lot of people think about when we're thinking about climate and health. It's the climate change who affects our health in different ways, directly and indirectly. We can see that or feel that, especially in summer in Europe and in urban areas, but also when thinking about new vector-borne diseases or extreme weather events, and indirectly through, for example, new challenges regarding food security. But when we are talking about climate change effects, the outcomes depends on the starting point. So people have different starting points and different vulnerabilities, and therefore they have other coping capacities or sensitivities when it comes to climate change effects. But climate change also affects economic sectors directly via the impacts of climate change when there are, like, for example, extreme weather events, but indirectly via healthcare demand and labor supply. I'm going to talk about in the next slide about the impacts of heat on labor supply, So that's one point we also have to face with, and yeah, very important when dealing with these interlinked areas. But economic sectors itself affect inequality as well. For example, when we are talking about inclusion, income, or access to services, and economic sectors affect health directly by burden or care. For example, when we're talking about co-pollutants of specific industry, and indirectly via contributing to climate change health because they are emitting greenhouse gas emissions. And we have, or you have now seen a lot of, like negative ways the different perspectives are interacting, but policies play a key role to avoid risks and to grasp opportunities from both sides of climate, from the adaptation and mitigation side. And when we are facing the health challenges, we have to speak more about health promotion and greening hospitals and their integration, and also see the ways they are interacting differently. And this should be like a guiding scheme for trade-offs and co-benefits. And you will see this framework, the whole presentation on, so you don't have to recognize it, you can see it. And what I mentioned before, like no action is no option in our point of view, because no action is likely to have high costs too, not only for the environment, but also on society and economy, and of course for health. And here's some examples of data we also used in the policy brief. So they are like approximately in 2018, the monetized value of heat-related mortality was equal to 1 to 2% of regional national income. And when we have a look further, there are like there are calculations that climate change related labor productivity losses due to heat stress might be up to 670 million euros per year by 2080. So of course we have to talk about mortality, that's like the hardest endpoint, but there are other impacts on health due to heat. But not only thinking about the greenhouse gas emissions and climate change and this effects on health, we also have to talk about co-pollutants of greenhouse gas emissions. For example, you can see when talking about particulate matter exposure, this has led to years of life lost with an economic value of 129 billion euros per year. So it's bad for the health due to co-pollutants and also bad for climate. And recently the European Environment Agency published new data on impact of co-pollutants on children's health, and they're estimated that over 1,200 deaths in people under 18 years of age are due to co-pollutants of greenhouse gas emissions. So another perspective which has to be seen when talking about climate change. And not addressing the interlinkages between climate and health will result in the continuation of unjust, unhealthy, and climate unfriendly outcomes. And what we mean by that is, at the moment, we can see more and more politicians, policymakers, people who are looking for or talking about escape routes for addressing the interlinkages. For example, a very recent topic was the e-fuels debate. But when we stick to this technology discourse focused on e-fuels or e-vehicles, we do not talk about the right things, because we do not address the problems with co-pollutants, noise pollution, lack of exercise, and the unequal burden sharing, or as well the potential which lies in the quality of urban living for all. And the risk of poorly and siloed planned mitigation policy is that the health problems which exist at the moment remain, and we miss the opportunity for increasing social cohesion. And one example for like the risk of silo plant mitigation policy is the equitable access to health service, because when the costs for transport, for reaching a medical treatment, or for the treatment itself, when they increase, maybe there could be an equity conflict because vulnerable groups cannot access the treatment anymore. So we have to deal with that with a specific eye open for the health perspective and for the equity aspect. And what I've showed you now, and the data we use in the policy brief, and all this evidence we have about climate and health and the interrelations, science and also a lot of people working in the policy domain know that for a very long time. And that was, for us, it was interesting having a look on why this evidence is not used adequately when planning policies. And my colleague, Willi Haas, is now going to talk about these barriers and these challenges.
Yeah, hello from my side. So you would think there are big risks and threats, and there are huge benefits in changing the course. So why are not everyone running in this direction? I mean, why should we not do it if it's so obvious? So we focus on barriers, and as soon as you focus on barriers, you get quite frustrated. So I warn you now. But there are many things that talk against change. Yeah, the first is we have this separation of responsibilities. The GHG emissions and the non-GHG emissions. They resort to different responsibilities, or the different economic sectors. We know in public health that the main idea that health is made by the health sector is really just part of the truth. Yeah, there are many other aspects that have a high impact on health, and they are ruled and governed by other policies, traffic policies, for example. We have heard about the pollution, for example, yeah, or lack of exercise. So it might be in education or in active mobility, again in traffic policy. So there are many interlinkages, and we are used to act in our very specific domains, and this is especially true for the EU, I would say. Yeah. So in the European Union, we have directorates that are responsible for production side, and others who are responsible for dealing with the negative impacts. Yeah, but that can only be properly addressed when working together, and it's quite a challenge to get these different directorates together. In science, you have a similar problem. Yeah, there is this nice saying: the world has complex problems, and the universities have departments or disciplines. So when we are trained as scientists, we learn to ignore the rest and to focus just on one thing to have a very good solution on that. Yeah. And as soon as we have to work together in interdisciplinary teams, that's disturbing, yeah, that people have different ideas or different worldviews or whatsoever. And credit systems and research funding all push us in that direction. So it's not easy to get out of it. And this is, of course, supported by these language silos. Yeah, when I was co-chairing a special report on health and climate change, I had a long discussion with the medical doctors in there, because they refused to use words everyone would understand, because they said it's not scientific. And I asked them, please write the common name into the brackets, and they said no, they can't do it. It's not scientific. Yeah, so it's really a deep-sitting issue. Yeah. Of course, we shouldn't ignore that there are a lot of vested interests. I mean, the past as it was had high benefits for certain industries and groups. And when we talk about change, as we suggested here, it would change who is winning and who is losing, and that's not easy to overcome. So as long as economic growth is the main issue and well-being for all is just subordinated to that, it's not easy to overcome that. And then in bureaucracy, I myself was working in a public service function at one ministry in Austria, and I realized that there's even literature on that, what I felt at that time. Yeah, you have to deliver your tasks, and as soon as someone comes in and has a different issue, yeah, it's disturbing you. Yeah, it's if you want to make a career within bureaucracy, the best is to fulfill the tasks as they are and not to scrutinizing them. So there are many different problems to change, and one of the issue that really can be highlighted in order to overcome this is the co-benefits. So these are the issues where you do something for health, for example, and it is good for mitigating climate change, or where you do something for climate change mitigation, and that's good for health. So we have one example in there are many more, not too many, but there are many more. And we focused just on one with the super blocks in Barcelona. So this is an area where you develop a certain block of 400 by 400 meter and look at it in a way that you reduce the traffic within there, and you reshape the built environment there for a very nice living space outside of the buildings, and you look that the public transport is very close to that super blocks. And they have done it quite a while ago, and now they have done some evaluation and interviewed people, and did some measures, and they realized that it improves air quality and reduces harmful emissions by 25%. And when they asked the people, 50% of women and men interviewed recognized reduced noise and air pollution. So the people realized it's better for their well-being. They realized the quality of sleep improved, and other health-related outcomes were far better as before. And there are many more other studies that show that the promotion of active mobilities in cities can really reduce GHG emissions by, in average 40%, and the premature mortality by 60 deaths per 100,000 inhabitants. I did myself such studies for cities. And what was in the next step very interesting is that the main problems of pollution and mainly of pollution, but of reduced noise as well, was benefiting the poor people, because poor people live where you have a lot of traffic, and if you make a change in traffic policy, it is improving health, and especially for the most vulnerable people. Okay, and so this is the carrot. I mean, there are many barriers, and with the carrot, we hope that helps to go in that direction. And we were thinking about what if there is a high willingness to go in that direction, what is needed, what can be done, yeah? And the first thing is we think it needs very clear intersecting and aligned goals for climate, health, and equity for this transformation. So you need goals that interlink these three domains. And it's very important to name concrete challenges. We shouldn't just talk about win-win without addressing what talks against it. Yeah, we really need to understand the conflicts, the underlying conflicts, and how to overcome these conflicts. And I think it's very important to have transparency principles in place because otherwise there are a lot of influential actors who act behind the scene, and that makes it very difficult. We need a high-level commission from different director generals mixed with academics from different disciplines for steering that. We realized it needs something like a reflexive, adaptive approach. You can't make a plan and then you do it from beginning to end. You need to react on how things develop. You need an interdisciplinary evidence base, so you need something that puts evidence not only in the different silos next to each other, but interrelates them, or that makes it to be interrelated. We need multi-solving approaches focusing on interrelations, specifically for using synergies and mitigating trade-offs. As soon as you go into specific measures and you have these interdisciplinary and expert committees, they understand well how to do that differently, but they need the space in order to go in that direction. And what has to be proven quite useful is to have a setting-based or place-shaping approach. So experiments on a local level where you say we would like to learn how to do that, and from these experiments to learn what kind of general rules need to be changed in order to have more of these kind of not experiments anymore, but of rollout of these kind of learnings. Yeah, and we have looked into the Green Deal, and the Green Deal in our assessment is going halfway or a quarter way. Yeah, so health and social topics are amongst core enablers when talking about climate policy. But when we look into the Green Deal, there are many transformative actions, but the conversion of structures for active mobility is no key goal. And as soon as you talk about health, it's not so much a question, do you use this motion or this motion, this motor technology or this one? It's more how to make the traffic less impactful. Yeah, and it's not just the emission, it's the noise problem, it's the sealed spaces that contribute to heat in urban areas, because sealed areas make a big problem here. Then we see that these policies lack consideration of vulnerable groups, and they have especially grown since COVID and the actual crisis triggered by the war in Ukraine. Then we have this diet gap. So this means a gap between what is healthy diet and what is the actual nutrition, and there's a big difference. And we know that this is a difference that is bigger in groups with lower economic socioeconomic status. So there needs to be a change, and this is not addressed in the Walk to Farm strategy. They are mainly focusing on labeling, and that falls short for addressing these complex problems. And it fails to acknowledge that price for food must reflect impacts of food production. And the food production has impacts on the workers' well-being. The COVID crisis has shown that in Germany especially, has a huge impact on animal welfare and the environment. Just think about antibiotics and so, and antibiotic resistance comes back to health again. And consumer health. We know that in Europe and in many countries, meat consumption is 2 to 5 times higher than the recommended kind of portion size. So and a lot of health diseases and risks are related to that. So at the moment, economic interests determines the discourse far more than these kind of issues of health or equity. So that's, so to say, a very important point that the Green Deal needs to be improved in that directions to take.
Thank you, Willi, and thanks, Christina. Indeed,
I would like to have one slide.
Please.
So we are saying leaving the silos is leaving the comfort zone. So that's really a problem. But on the other hand, we say we have very complex societal problems, and they demand this concerted action and responses. And of course, we have this problem that as soon as you ask who wants change, everyone is saying it's me. Yeah. As soon as you say who wants to change, then it becomes a bit silent. Yeah. And when you ask who wants to lead the change, it's difficult to find someone. Yeah. The interesting issue is that then many people say, if you ask who would like to keep continuing as always, everyone says it was not so bad in the past, let's go on. But I think we have to find ways out of this. Yeah, I understand this. Yeah, but the question is more like who is ready to break a piece out of the silo wall as a first step, and at the next opportunity. And I think this is important to be better prepared for the multiple challenges of the future. And that's it now. Sorry for overstretching your time budget.
Thanks a lot for covering actually the two important topics that we wanted to address today, that I address to Tomáš Petříček as well. That is that of the conjunction between health policy and climate policy, and where we can find solutions that benefit and give us the so-called double dividend. But at the same time, Tomáš, I look at you as an experienced policymaker, actually, to help us building on what Willi has said on what is the governance structure and the political leadership we need to break the silos. We have named this series exactly breaking the silos, because we think that impact depends largely from this. I also wanted to mention, Tomáš, that you have recently published a study for the Progressive Analytical Center exactly on health related issues of the more vulnerable. So somehow the socioeconomic determinants of health and also climate risks are in a sense very similar. So I suppose that instructs also the type of public policy we have to do. Tomáš, I give you the floor, but I would like to to recall to our listeners, those that are online now on Zoom, or those that are following via YouTube, that they can ask questions just like Angelo has just done. And we will address them right after your contribution, even though this one on the Commission contribution to breaking the silos have already been partly addressed by Willi in his intervention on the EU Green Deal. Tomáš Petříček, you have the floor.
Thank you, David. I will probably start by saying that I would always prefer to lead by example when telling somebody to break out of silos. I'm an expert in geopolitics, actually, and you might ask why I'm interested in health issues. And I think that because there are links, and you have to always try to look at the links between different areas. Because action in one area might influence, accidentally even, action in very, very different areas. I would like to raise 3 points maybe for the discussion. First of all, I very support what was already said about the interrelationship, mutually reinforcing effects of health policy actions, climate change. And I'm glad that it was mentioned that vulnerabilities should be taken into considerations because these are reinforcing themselves. If you have more vulnerable social groups, they tend to be also more exposed to health-related problems. And very often these are people that are going to bear most of the impact or brush of the climate change, both in terms of climate change mitigation, actually, and in terms of climate change adaptation as well, and we should be aware of that. I would also maybe highlight in this context that while thinking about positives, we always have to have in mind that we need to have a comprehensive answer how to mitigate also possible negative side effects. Let me, for example, show an example from the area we researched recently. If we speak about climate change mitigation, we know that it will impact some sectors quite heavily. And we, for example, have to bear in mind that long-term layouts, long-term unemployment leads also to increased alcoholism, for example. So yes, on one hand, we have positive effects, for example, closing down the coal mines. At the same time, if we do not do prevention, we might have side effects in very different areas. So always calculate for the benefits, but bear in mind that there might be consequences we don't see at the moment, but we should try to make a foresight for them. Second, I would like to raise the issue of mental health here in this context, because when speaking about climate change and health, we do not speak only about physical health, but also mental health, because actually the impacts of climate change are also increasing the stress, which also negatively contributes to mental ill health. And at the same time, what Dr. Haas mentioned at the last slide, mental well-being is a precondition for people to be more acceptable or more able to endorse change. So if we start with building a well-being society, we are building also a society that is more able to accept changes necessary for climate mitigation. And last but not least, I would like to also mention a question, for example, breaking silos also means that you have to avoid building new silos. So you always have to be very open to include other considerations in the debate. For example, if we speak about climate and health, I would always like to approach it, and here I'm back to at the beginning, why I'm interested in the issue as a security and geopolitical expert, because it is part of, for example, resilience debate. Society that works on improving the health and social cohesion, at the same time working on strengthening its own resilience, and vice versa. In contrary, if we do not work in this field, we are planting seeds for internal incohesion in our societies, making our societies weaker. So even from the perspective of security analysis, I feel that these debates are important because the strength of the society, its social cohesion, its ability to improve the well-being of the society, improve the adaptability of the society, it makes the whole society more resilient to any shocks, any risks in the future. So thank you very much for this very interesting presentation, for this work, because I think it's bringing a lot of impulses for future work.
Thanks a lot, Tomáš. To you, a little question that also builds on the question by Angelo. His question was specifically referred to the Commission, but I also ask to you: up to which level do you think the European governments and in different member states and the EU are able to create spaces for interdisciplinary action? The interplay between industrial policy and climate policy, between health and social cohesion, regional policy. So we're leading by example from the side of a minister or the side of a commissioner. What do you think is the way forward, or how actually to break the silos from a governance viewpoint? Do you see it's something that is at least coming up more and more in administration, so that there is a little bit hope, even if maybe the steps are slower than we thought?
I see some efforts to introduce interdisciplinary approach even to governance at a European level for sure. At national level, I can speak only on from the Czech perspective. But it is always difficult, as we have traditionally hierarchical structures that tend to create the silos and strengthen the silos. You see how difficult it is, for example, to break down the barriers between the line ministries in working on cross-cutting issues. So I think it's through building cross-ministerial teams this task, bringing experts from different line ministries, from different departments to work on the same task together, not to work separately and then bring the inputs to the work at the end of the process, should be the way of maybe changing the way the governance structure works. And when it comes, for example, to research, I think that we have a lot of tools in terms of funding, because there is still relatively little funding available for interdisciplinary research, for interdisciplinary analysis, policy making analysis, for example, as well. Usually, you are rather pushed to be more and more specialized than to work in interdisciplinary. So I think there are ways how to improve it.
Good point. Let me go quickly to Céline Charveriat. Céline, I know that probably you don't have a lot of time for us, and sorry for being a bit slow in giving you the floor, but I'm quite sure you have a lot to contribute on the mapping of the interconnection between climate and health. Maybe also on the issue of eco-anxiety that Tomáš was referring to, as well as on the governance aspect, isn't it, Céline?
Hi, very nice to be here. Thank you very much for the presentations. Yeah, I wanted really to focus my points on something that was also already mentioned by Tomáš on mental health. I think we have a silent epidemic in Europe, which is multi-factor. And why it's important to speak about this now is that the EU is about to review its mental health strategy. And when you look at the impact of crossing the 9 planetary boundaries on mental health, you see a wide range of impacts. The most direct one is heat, and we know now in Spain, but we've also seen it in India, that we are seeing now prolonged periods of very high temperatures, which have very detrimental impacts on mental health, but also exposure to pollutants in the air, in the soil, in the water, greater propensity for natural disasters. And all these elements we know have impact on depression, anxiety, suicide propensity, various neurological disorders, as well as dementia. And we also have more indirect impacts when we destroy biodiversity. There is a study that says that the value for mental health of protecting natural spaces across the world amounts to $5.5 trillion. One element I wanted to highlight on health for all is also to look at the intergenerational element and access of that. When we talk about the infamous forever chemicals, well, they are forever. And I think we need really to make sure, therefore, talking about solutions, that we double down on mainstreaming the elements, the dimensions of climate justice in all the aspects of the European Green Deal, which means, for instance, in the zero pollution strategy, making sure that we will address forever chemicals, but also pesticides. We are looking now at a green industrial strategy. Let's look at eco-design from the start so we can really build a chemical industry that does not further endanger health. Another element would be the cooling strategy, very important, not only in Europe, but mostly in developing countries where they will have the brunt of the impact and they have less access to diagnosis or treatment of mental health. And I want to highlight specifically on cooling that when you have a long-standing mental health condition, many of the medications you take tend to diminish your ability to self-regulate your body temperature. So we will need also to adapt treatments as part of our approach looking at the intersections. Then two last recommendations. One is to look at how can you strengthen over the course of a life from birth to death resilience of individuals and how do we do it in a just way? Because we know that the poorest members of society are those that are the most exposed to the impacts of climate change, have the least access to the healthcare system, but also the least access to green spaces. And nature in itself is a medicine, but they don't have that much access to it. There's a good study about it from the EA about that, and that looked at this in Europe. And finally, this was mentioned already by the previous speaker, how do we move beyond the current understanding of growth? And what I would propose is to put care at the center of the society in Europe, both in terms of self-care, caring for others, and caring for the planet. Because Europe is an aging continent, and an aging continent will be even more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And we know that when there are natural disasters, older people do not recover from the shock and the trauma that those elements, traumatic events represent in their lives. Thank you, and I'm really sorry I need to go, so I won't be available to answer questions. Thank you.
Céline, thanks a lot, because this was a fantastic way to condense in few minutes a lot of recommendation and material. Much appreciated. We'll reconnect with you soon, and good luck for the rest of the day. Thanks for starting the day with us with this progressive policy breakfast meeting. I go back to the author and presenters, Christina and Willi, adding two questions that we gathered from Marine. She's asking where do you think is more promising to have to see in the near future the breaking of the silos? It's more in European action on health that will also address climate, or if you think that it will be more on the Green Deal that we will add on additional concern on the health, where you are more hopeful, and she links this with a question that pertains on what would be your desire in terms of at least the first policy that you would like to see with a climate angle within the European Health Union. So if you imagine a big step forward on Europe on health, what would be the first recommendation that you give in order to take care of the climate implication? The other question, completely different from Malik, looks instead at the construction building sector, stressing that it is, for probably the construction sector will be highly impacted by the green transition for sustainable infrastructure, renewal of building, public and private. What needs to be done there in order to make sure that health health and safety at the workplace and other health risks are mitigated? So I'll leave you the floor, Christina or Willi, as you prefer, maybe to provide a little feedback to Tomáš and Céline, and to try to answer to this additional question by Marine and Malik.
Okay, rich questions, I have to say. Yeah, in my view, where to start first, from the climate or the health? The health issues, the health promotion is one of the approaches that tries to reform the approach in health, and that's, I think, is a very important one. But we stuck there, yeah. and I think the climate issue brings in is a game changer for that. Yeah. So I think it's important to use the responses to the climate. We have to do anyway. Yeah. And to use that for putting the health agenda on a higher level, on a higher priority. I think that's the way I would go for that. And with climate, I mean, the longer we wait, and we have waited now for a very long time, yeah, the less we can make use of the opportunities that are in there. Yeah, and I think we still can use opportunities when we start now, and this is not just adapting to climate change, but also looking for these co-benefits, and that would be the entry point for me to go in the direction of bringing health in and not bringing the health in terms of treatments, because we know this treating health problems is quite GHG emission intensive. Yeah, we know that it's between 7 and 10% of the footprint of countries is related to health treatments. We have to go in the direction of health promotion. So how to prevent it, how to act on issues where we can improve health and at the same time mitigate. And this brings me to the issues where to set priorities. In my view, there are these two issues that are really major issues. The one is transport policy. To have a transport policy that really focuses on active mobility in urban areas. I think this, when you tackle urban areas first, I think it's the best, because there it's a low-hanging fruit, so to say, and active mobility is good for the health of all, and especially for the vulnerable groups. Yeah? And just this side remark, we realized that with the heat stress, there are many recommendations for old people not to move anymore. And this is a big problem. Yeah, you need to develop far more differentiated ways to dealing with that, because we are an aging society, and we need to take care that people who age are still part of their communities and they are not retreating into their homes, and this accelerates their disease career a lot. Yeah, so that's very important to find here different ways. And I just go to the last and maybe yeah. And this construction sector, I'm dealing with this issue quite a lot. And one of the big issues, just to go one step before that, is Europe is an old continent, so to say, in terms of long-term industrialization, and Europe is built, yeah. And we are still building new buildings like crazy, yeah. And I think this is a big problem, yeah. We really need to adapt what we have already, yeah, in a way that it's good for our quality of life. And this changes the whole issue of health and safety in the construction sector, because we do not need these big industrial construction sites where we build huge buildings on the green space. Yeah, we need to a good conversion and reconstruction of our existing buildings, and this needs completely different qualifications and different jobs. Yeah, so we have, on the one hand, we have at present the jobs is not the restriction. We know that. Yeah, in many countries we have a very good development concerning employment. But when it comes to climate change, we have too many people with low skills in certain sectors, and we have too little people with skills, higher skills in other sectors. So there is a huge, in the labor policy, there is a huge challenge how to organize this kind of transition in order. And this would bring the health and safety issue on a completely different angle. Yeah, and just
Thank you.
One issue I wanted to add. I think it was very important that hint at the security issue. Yeah, with colleagues in the US, I realized when you talk about sustainability in the science, they have big problems in addressing sustainability in the US. But as soon as you phrase it as a security issue, yeah, they're with you. Yeah, and I think it's so important not to be too narrow when arguing, because then you only get the old suspects into your alliance. Yeah, we need to have different approaches that emphasize different problems that all end up at something that is related to each other, in order to have alliances that are broader and bring in new kind of actors.
Indeed, avoiding climate and health risk is a security issue. Thanks for reminding that, Christina.
Yeah, I just want to add shortly to the discussion about the construction buildings and health and safety, because what's very obvious, but I think we cannot mention it often enough, is the health aspect when we're talking about urban planning, about spatial planning, and also having or integrating health experts when planning spatial space, for example, and putting the health argument in front and talking about what urban place or spatial planning can do for health and well-being. Just a quick add-on on Willi's explanations. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Will, for the contribution today, as well as for the nice policy brief that you contributed. Last word, let me go to Tomáš, Petříček, to check if we can conclude on an optimistic way. What gives you hope to in this domain? Give us a line that can somehow reinforce our motivation and our hopes.
I'm fully convinced that health is recently becoming not number one issue in Europe and for Europeans. It's among the top 3 issues, and actually framing climate policies through health lenses, perspective of like health, well-being. I think it's bringing a strong point to the whole narrative about the need to change our economies, to becoming greener, to push for just green transition. And I think that breaking the silos is the only way how to bring new ways of policy making, new impulses to improving our governance. I think we are a little bit stuck in Europe recently, and I think part of the problem is that we have over-specialized, and we are missing more and more on the complexity of the world we are living in. And please let me conclude by saying that as a social democrat and as a progressive, I see that our priority must be the quality of life and well-being of people. And here I think that the connection between climate and health is only proving that this is the core principle on which our policy should be organized for the future. So thank you very much for bringing the issue, and thank you also for inviting me.
Nice words to conclude this progressive policy breakfast meeting on climate and health. I'm David Rinaldi, Director of Studies and Policies at FEPS. Big thanks to Willi Haas, Christina Lampl, Tomáš Petříček, and Céline Charveriat, as well as to colleagues at FEPS and the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung for having facilitated the meeting today and the preparation of the policy brief series. You have all policy briefs already online on FEP's website. One on just climate and climate justice in somehow its theoretical approach into the different discipline. One specific on the interplay between climate and health, one on climate and gender, one on climate and digital policy. One of the online presentation on climate justice can already be found online, while if you want to listen live to the next session on climate and gender and climate and digital policy, there's still time to register. Please go online and because we will have them over the next 2 weeks. So thanks a lot for following on YouTube and Zoom. Have a nice day and stay connected with the progressives.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to all of you. Extremely nice paper.
Enjoy, Florian.